really great matchups we're going to break down today. And maybe, Dalton, the best matchup of the whole weekend is coming on Friday night. That is number 20 Arizona at number 14 Kansas State. Like I said, Friday night, 8 p.m. Eastern time on Fox. The storyline for this game, Dalton, is a fascinating one. This is one of the biggest Big 12 games of the year. But this technically isn't even a Big 12 game because this game back in 2016 was scheduled as a home-and-home series between Arizona and Kansas State for this year and next year as a part of their non-conference schedule. Because remember, Arizona was a member of the Pac-12 at that point. So when Arizona moved to the Big 12, they kept this game as a non-conference game. So really, they're playing 10 games against Big 12 opponents, Arizona and K-State this year, while the rest of the conference plays 9. So while this is a massive game in terms of, 2 of the 4 Big 12 teams are in the top 20, it's a massive game for determining who the real contenders are in the Big 12. It actually doesn't even affect the conference standings at all, which is pretty interesting.
Right. I mean, the most interesting part about it is if the Big 12 is going to be a league that gets more than one bid, then this could be a huge game for both teams. Let's say one of these teams makes the conference title game with a win in this game, even though it doesn't count towards the standings, and loses the conference title game. It helps their case big time for an at-large with them both being in the top 20, especially for Arizona being on the road in Manhattan. That's one of the hardest places to play in college football against a really good K-State team. This is huge. If especially with everything we've seen in the ACC, we kind of feel like it might just be a one-bid league. Mm-hmm. Maybe the Big 12 could sneak a second or even third team in there, but I think one of these, whichever team wins this game, has a much more likely chance of that happening for them.
The ACC and Notre Dame now suffering a bad loss. If Notre Dame loses again, you could absolutely see the Big 12 getting another team in there. So, Dalton, you had the Kansas State offense in this game against the Arizona's defense. What should we be watching out for when the Wildcats have the ball?
It's kind of the same thing. Actually, you mentioned the Wildcats.
They're
both Wildcats. When we were writing our preview, I was like, I can't use Wildcats either way. But no, the big thing is always K-State's running game, right? And you've got this dynamic three-headed monster of Avery Johnson, DJ Giddens, and now Dylan Edwards, the Colorado transfer, who I think has brought a real spark to them, just the speed and what he brings on the outside. Even as Giddens runs in between the tackles, and Johnson with all his speed, both as a design runner and as a scrambler. You've got a three-headed rushing monster. And I think if you remember when we previewed at the beginning of the year Florida State and Georgia Tech, and I talked about Florida State's linebackers, kind of they're better with downhill runs and when they know where the ball's going and it's just a designed handoff. They're good at making plays in the hole, but they struggle a bit with option stuff and with getting east and west. I think that's the thing I'm looking for. They're two linebackers, Jacob Manu and Tay Brown. They're kind of those types of linebackers. They're downhill, they're big, they're physical, but they really sometimes they're looking in the backfield, right? And you see guys pulling, and Kansas State runs more gap schemes than any team in the country. So you've got a group that has to, one, read the offensive line and read guards and read pullers coming left and right. They're running counter, they're running power, they're just all over the place with options. Then you have the second dimension of Avery Johnson can keep the ball on any given play, and he can absolutely fly. He had 5 rushing touchdowns in a game last year against Texas Tech. He's a much more dynamic runner right now than he is as a passer, but especially for Arizona's linebackers, I could see this being a serious problem because I think their defensive line is playing well. I think their secondary is playing relatively well, but it's right on that second level where I start to worry about, okay, even some of the RPO stuff that K-State has in, it's not a complicated passing game, but it's a passing game that's also based around their running game. And all three of these guys can really, really run the ball, and Avery Johnson at the center of it as the option threat any given play, I think can cause Arizona a lot of problems. We saw even a couple weeks ago when they struggled with New Mexico. They didn't struggle with the designed handoff game and anything that was going to the running backs. They did struggle with quarterback runs. And Devin Dampier, I think he had almost 140 rushing yards in that game. If you struggle with running quarterbacks, K-State is not the team you want to play. So I think that's a very, very key matchup. Is just going to be all of K-State's run schemes against Arizona's linebackers in this game.
And not only that, Avery Johnson's a dangerous running threat, but also DJ Giddens has 5 straight games with at least 100 rushing yards. He's one of the best running backs in America, so that's a dangerous, dangerous run game that Arizona has to account for. And on the other side of the ball, Dalton, with Arizona, is their passing game that really is the driving force behind this team. My biggest matchup I'm looking for, though, can Arizona find someone outside of Tetairoa McMillan to rely on in this game? Tetairoa McMillan, make no mistake about it, is an absolute superstar. He's a top 5 prospect on PFF's big board right now, made by Trevor Sickman. You can check it out at pff.com. Strong argument, he's the best receiver in college football right now. He really proved that in week 1 in the 61-39 victory over New Mexico. School record 304 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns on 10 catches. He was completely unguardable one-on-one. Northern Arizona watched that tape, FCS school, and they said, okay, why would we want to play single coverage against the best receiver in the country when we're an FCS team? So what did they do in that game? They bracketed him every single freaking play. Every time he was out there, there was a corner and a safety that had their eyes on him and was going over to that side of the field the entire time. And they had great success doing that because Tedrick McMillan, after having 304 yards in week 1, had 2 catches for 11 yards in week 2. And with their top weapon neutralized, Arizona went from scoring 39 points over New Mexico, an FBS team, to 22 points against Northern Arizona, an FCS team. So Kansas State probably saw that and said, hey, we take away Tedrick McMillan, Noah Fafita is going to have to find someone outside of him to throw the ball to. So I think guys like tight end Keon Burnett, wide receiver Jeremiah Patterson, they're going to have to step up, I think, a little bit in this game. The issue for Kansas State, though, right now they're 79th in coverage grade this year at 69.7, so it hasn't been a great coverage unit for Kansas State. But really, the book is almost out on this Arizona offense, at least in the passing game. Is like, you take away number 4, and Arizona could have a lot of issues. There isn't a Jacob Cowing this year. They don't have a really good number 2 receiver. That could present some problems for the Wildcats in this game.
Yeah, I agree, and I think another thing for them is going to be to run the ball with Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, with Quali Conley. That's been big for them in the first couple weeks, having a little bit of balance, and they're going to need more of it. This is going to be a physical game, and I think you're right. If you're playing against Arizona, number 4 is that's number 1 right there. Is what it is you have to double him, you have to rotate coverages towards him, and I think we will see whether K-State can make that happen, because against Tulane, even last week, they had a lot of issues in coverage. So it's obviously about trying to win with your best players, but Arizona is going to need more balance if they're going to succeed and make a Big 12 title run like we think they are.
Absolutely. So, Dalton, we have been all over Arizona all offseason. We both have them in the college football playoff right now. I haven't seen too many other playoff predictions with the Arizona Wildcats in the college football playoff, so a lot is riding on this game for us, with our predictions preseason. Does Arizona go into Manhattan, Kansas, and pull off a massive victory, or does Kansas State establish themselves as one of the best teams, if not the best team, in the Big 12?
This is such a tough game to pick because we have such contrasting styles, right? You have a 3-headed rushing monster against the classic quarterback receiver dynamic, and I just think in Manhattan, I still think Arizona can and will win the Big 12. But this is not a good matchup for them. And I think there are other matchups in the Big 12, even against the better running teams, that I think they can learn from this game. And I actually have Kansas State winning this game.
Okay.
I think it's going to be high scoring. I think it's going to be really close. But the things that you just mentioned, where Arizona needs someone else to step up, right? Or unless Fafita and McMillan just go crazy like they did 2 weeks ago, always a possibility with them. But it feels like, looking at this matchup, there's a lot of ifs, plus they're on the road on a Friday night, right? Mm-hmm. They need somebody else. They need to have a better-than-expected rushing performance. Or Noah Fafita just needs to be special in this game, which he could be. He very well could be. We still think he's one of the 10 best quarterbacks in the country. But I look at Kansas State, and I watch them, and I go, on offense at least, they just need to be themselves, right? And it's Avery Johnson, it's DJ Giddens, it's Dylan Edwards. And one more stat about linebackers. Last year, opposing linebackers against Kansas State across the whole season had a 42 run defense grade.
Wow.
One of the hardest things in college football to do is play linebacker against this defense. It's going to be a huge key. Now, I'll admit to you, if Arizona has a plan and they find any way to stop the run against Kansas State, they could very well win this. I think it's a coin flip game, honestly. I think I could rely on picking Kansas State's foundation in this specific matchup a little bit more. And I really think Dylan Edwards makes a big difference, because last year you had Will Howard and you had Avery Johnson kind of rotating in, and then you just had Giddens. I think Edwards is a really big piece of this offense, adding a speed dimension, adding an outside dimension to what Giddens already gives you between the tackles. 34-30, I have Kansas State.
34-30, I'm taking Arizona in this game, 30-27. I think that K-State secondary is a little vulnerable, and I think you got one of the best quarterbacks in the country, like you said, Noah Fafita, and maybe the best receiver in college football in Tedrick McMillan. They could take advantage of that. And I do think if Kansas State doubles McMillan every play, Fafita might be able to find some other guys in this game. I also think a great call up by you. Quali Conley has been a really impressive player through 2 weeks so far. He's a guy that I think could also have a good day against Kansas State if they really try to bracket McMillan every single play. So I got Arizona. I'm sticking with our big preseason Big 12 champion, 30-27 in this game. But it is an absolute nail biter for me coming down to it. And Dawn, you and I forgot to mention at the top, you and I have the same record in game picks this year at 10-2. So this could be one that determines who takes the lead in that game picks right now. So I got Arizona 30-27, and this game's going to be a great game, and I can't wait for that on Friday night. Maybe the best game of the weekend is on Friday night, so I can't wait for that one.